Well, that took a lot longer than I wanted it to, due to me having to keep up with this new event in between my job and stay up late at night to keep up with it completely, and having to wait for the characters to rotate over and over and over again and grind that freaking PQ over and over and over again. But after a long series of grinding, I have unlocked every single one of these variations, and in this video today I have decided to rank them all from worst to best, because there are many skills that were really good additions, but there were also quite a few that were so bad to the point to where I question why they were even put in the game in the first place. But before we get into the ranking, please, if you haven't yet, hit that like button at the bottom below, share the video, subscribe to my channel if you are new. I do my best to upload as often as I possibly can, and it helps for me to stay motivated and keep uploading more content like this in the foreseeable future. Also, if you haven't yet, it also helps if you hit that bell icon so that you never miss an upload the moment it goes live. But anywho, I think I have rambled on for long enough. Why don't we get into it with the first in the ranking, the absolute worst in the game in my opinion, the freaking bottom of the barrel. This thing is so ass. Hellblade Rush. Now this new skill is a whole different level of garbage that shouldn't even exist, mainly because it does shit damage, only just barely breaking 5500, but it also replaces his sledgehammer skill, which just comboed a lot more easy with his petrifying spit and such. But as you can see right here, the absolute worst freaking problem with this skill is that it is freaking snap vanishable. Through basic gas, fundamental snap vanishes, you are able to 100% guarantee a punish on this skill. Every single hit in this skill is vanishable. Even the very last hit, which is a freaking grab. It's literally just a reskin animation of his grab attack, yet it is vanishable. And whenever you hit somebody with this skill, their stamina recovers just fast enough to where that last hit is also going to be vanishable every single time you hit this skill, unless they've got no stamina left. In which case, every single time your dumbass tries to even hit this thing, your opponent's going to try and stamina break punish you for even daring to try and use it against them. And the last hit, because of the fact that being hit by this thing makes them recover just enough stamina, that last hit is also guaranteed to be punished. So there's basically no point in using this outside of stamina breaks because you're never going to get the full animation off. But not only that, but to top it all off, Dimps and their incompetent selves also did not make sure that this thing was stable online in the slightest. That's right, even in just a little bit of latency, this thing drops 100% of the time. And this is a problem that Deborah has had on his basic combo strings for a while as well. Why have you not fixed this, Dimps? And sadly, because Deborah is one of my favorite characters to play in this game, that puts Hellblade Rush at an F- for being arguably the worst freaking skill in the entire game. Seriously, Dimps, just why? Coming up next, we have Krillin's new Solar Flare Festival skill. Whoopee! Another 3-bar evasive skill. Didn't we need more of these in the game? Now you can do a little bit of damage by linking a Kamehameha after hitting this skill, and it is impossible to 1-bar vanish. However, it is raw stamina break punishable if your opponent has the right skills to do so. And it does have a really good amount of iframes, especially from close range, as you can see here, tanking an entire Super Kamehameha, but from far range, it only has a little bit of iframes, as you can see here. And that, unfortunately, leaves Krillin's new evasive skill at a painfully average D for being no better than Instant Rise. And not only that, but you have to grind for this damn thing, too. And it's linked to this crappy variation with low stamina. Coming up next, we have Goku's new Super Spirit Bomb Festival Edition. And this skill, while it is cool looking and it hits harder than the original skill by a decent amount, It has a very, very bad problem that I'll get into in a bit, but I'll show you this real quick. You actually can make it function like the original skill in the base game. If you turn Super Saiyan, it does not go into that full cinematic animation, and you can use it to combo into Super Kamehameha for extra damage, which is another reason why this is just overall not even worth trying to get off. But the problem with this skill is the same one that the original skill had. Even when your opponent has a gargantuan stamina bar and you break them at the lowest stamina possible, they will still have enough time to fully recover, burst dash right through your freaking bomb, and grab you for a guaranteed punish. This is the same problem that the original skill had, and it's why it's never used in PvP. It is completely impractical and essentially impossible. Not to mention, as you see here, if you get hit by this and your opponent evasives, you go into the full Super Saiyan transformation animation, and that is another guaranteed punish. And if they have a Molotov, that is your ass. That is 15,000 damage for basically completely free. And sadly, that leaves our boy Goku and his new Super Spirit Bomb Festival at a painful C- for being no better than the original skill and being completely impossible to be practical in PvP at all. And then next we have Broly and his new Gigantic Omega revamp. This is just terrible. Why on earth would they make this skill worse than it already was? It already had some problems, but this is just terrible. This new revamped Gigantic Omega is the epitome of gimmicky. Not only does it get a teleport, which is completely useless, by the way, because it shoots a full-screen energy blast. There's no point to the teleport at all. But also, it gets a crappy follow-up that does 0 damage and gets no follow-up afterwards. Unlike the original skill, which you could at least chase your opponent down with flying and continue the combo afterwards. But in order to do that with this new one, you have to break their stamina first. And that is just... it's just infinitely worse than the original skill. Just, why would they even bother creating this piece of crap? Not to mention the fact that you can still point-blank snap vanish this, just like the original skill. Terrible, just terrible. And that leaves Broly's new Gigantic Omega revamp at a deserved C-, just like the previous skill, for adding nothing new to the game, not fixing the issues with the original skill, and just overall being a questionable waste of time to create. Just why? Coming up next, we have Redit and his new revamped Double Sunday skill. Now this skill works a lot like Total Detonation Ball, Gorgeous Shot, and Crusher Ball. However, unlike those skills, this skill has entirely unbreakable iframes at the very beginning because it goes into an instant rise. They used an instant rise instead of anything else, which makes this especially good as a pseudo-evasive counter. However, it does have a sweet spot at the very bottom that makes the blasts miss. It's very easy to perfect block, very easy to dodge. However, it is pretty safe to just throw out because you can cancel pretty fast. The kick is guaranteed to follow up at the very end, however, it does not do that much damage, which kinda sucks. And for that, I'm going to leave Redit's new Double Sunday skill at a solid C+, for being better than the previous skills mentioned overall, being far more useful and practical, and just not being a terrible revamped skill. After Redit and his skill, we have Videl and her new evasive skill, although it is really just Eagle Kick with a elbow at the very end. That elbow drop is so freaking good. It is guaranteed to follow up every single time you hit the knee, and you get guaranteed follow-ups afterwards. The Eagle Kick maintains its iframes. Yes, it costs 3 bars, but this is probably one of the better 3-bar evasives in the game. And that puts our girl Videl's new evasive skill at a C+, just like Redit's, for being overall just more useful than any other 3-bar in the game. Next up, we have Android 17 and his new side bridge skill. Now, this side bridge skill is actually kind of weird. It is really just 3 of the damn regular side bridges sandwiched together into one freaking attack. This makes it hit multiple times, but it is incredibly slow on startup. Very easy to see coming. You cannot throw this in neutral without being punished, guaranteed, every single time, and you do not recover very fast at all. It is also overall just worse in general than the original skill, not just because of the speed difference, but also because it travels slower and it doesn't combo consistently from a certain distance. You can infinite chain the original, but the new side bridge, it just is not consistent in the slightest. Because of how slow it travels back and forth, it just doesn't combo well at all. It's very hard to get this thing to combo correctly because the stun is not good and because the speed is terrible. Go for this if you're a completionist. That puts 17's above Vidal's by just a little bit, and that's simply because hers is a 3-bar evasive skill. Otherwise, this skill kinda blows, to be honest. Up next, we have Ginu and his new Milky Dance skill. Now, this skill is a little bit interesting. It functions very similar to Deborah's Hellblade Rush skill. However, this one is significantly better by a lot of degrees, aside from one problem that it shares with Hellblade Rush, which I'll get into here in a bit. But aside from that, it combos into his skills very well, especially full power energy blast volley, and to a lesser extent his Ginyu Force special combo forward input, which can be a little bit iffy because the camera angle just makes this skill not work. But that's just a problem with Ginyu Force special combo as a whole. That ain't really a problem with the new Milky Dance skill. It is very unsafe on block, however, and I cannot stress this enough how bad it is when getting blocked, especially when you're just guarded. Just guarding this skill results in the rest of the hits completely whiffing through iframes. So you can be raw stamina break punished if you throw this out in neutral and it gets perfect blocked. And also, the big problem with this skill that it shares with Hellblade Rush, it can be raw vanished and result in you also getting raw stamina break punished by a competent player. And that leaves Captain Ginu's new Milky Dance skill at a B-. That is the highest rank I could give it because it has the fatal flaw of being vanishable and raw stamina break punishable. Coming up next, and I know people are going to crucify me for saying this, but we have Gogeta and his new series accurate God Punisher. This one is just so much better looking than the original skill, it's not even funny, but that's part of the reason why this skill angers me so greatly, is that it is worse than the original skill in terms of practicality and just overall not at all worth using when compared to his Super Kamehameha skill, because the Super Kamehameha is just so much more practical. Whereas the God Punisher, both versions, freaking make your opponent recover stamina so fast when you hit them with it that even when their stamina broken, it's just not worth doing any kind of combo before you hit them with it, because they're just going to recover stamina so fast that the last hit, the most high damaging hit in the move, is not going to land, which unfortunately results in you getting punished for using the skill. And that is just poor design, in my opinion, especially for a skill that is so cool looking. The only ways I've found to actually make this skill do any significant damage in a stamina break is to heavy stamina break your opponent, which is very difficult to do with Blue Gogeta because you can only do it on the ground, and either use his Kamehameha buff or Limit Burst, and then throw it out raw during the stun. You'd think they would have made this skill better than the original. And because of those big reasons, I just simply cannot bring myself to give this thing a higher rank than a B-. Just seriously, why is it no better than the original? Coming up next, we have Zamasu and his new Instant Severance Counter Ultimate skill. Now, this skill functions nothing like the original one from the base DLC in the game, because it is not a charge forward, it is a counter skill, and it doesn't scale with strike like the original either. It completely scales with ki blast damage. It'll counter every form of strike damage in the entire game. It has a protective barrier that will protect you for a short period of time, acting like a temporary shield if it doesn't counter things, and it actually has a very nice counter window. However, it does not counter everything, it does not counter things with armor, and it will not counter limit bursts, which is unfortunate for a counter in this game. And that unfortunately leaves Zamasu's at a B. I cannot give it one any higher than that because of the fatal flaw of not being able to counter limit bursts and not being able to counter energy blasts. After Zamasu, we have Nappa and his new arm crash skill. A revamped version of the original skill that is just overall a massive improvement. Not only can you combo into this fairly easily, but you can fully charge it in combos fairly easily using his auto vanish combo, but it also extends, which is the main problem that the original skill had. It had no combo extension, and the whole gimmick was that it instantly guard broke people if they decided to block it. However, it could still be perfect blocked. This skill has the same problem, but if you perfect block this skill, you can immediately block cancel and perfect block them back. And this thing is so freaking good for combos. Combo extensions, combo enders, you name it. It is just a massive improvement to the original skill. The only way that they could possibly make this skill any better is to make it have the armor that Arm Crash used to have, so that it can properly be used to trade with things. If they did that, this skill would be absolutely perfect. Sadly, that one thing leaves me ranking this skill lower. Though this skill is the first of any of its nature to be a massive improvement from the original, and that gives this skill a solid B+ in my eyes. Seriously, good job, Dimps. Up next we have Kefla and her new series accurate blaster ball. Now this skill functions very different from the original. Not only does she shoot 6 balls with this instead of the original's only 2, however you cannot multi-shot it anymore, though it does have much more tracking than the original and does a solid amount of damage as a quick little ranged combo ender. There's not much else to say, it's just a solid skill. Very solid blast skill. Good job, Dimps. You managed to make it good, but not worse. It's just a very solid blast skill all around, and it would be really good in the hands of CACs, so I'm going to go ahead and give this a solid A-. Coming up next, we have Mr. Boo, aka Fat Boo, and his new Innocence Bullet revamp. It goes into a little pelvic thrust, knee thrust, whatever you want to call it, and then guarantees the blast follow-up, unlike the original, which was very slow and difficult to set up. It poisons the exact same amount, and the poison is just as strong as the original. That's a little disappointing. I always thought that this should probably be a little bit stronger than the original in terms of its poison damage, because the original already does more damage overall, but we can't have everything, and overall, it's just a solid little improvement. And because of that, I give this new revamped Innocence Bullet a solid A-, because it's better than the original. However, I really do wish it did more poison damage. Now, I know this confused a lot of us whenever we first saw it online, and that is Pan's new Faint Shot revamp. The only difference with this skill is that it's just an improvement. You're allowed to do a forward blast that stuns and restans the opponent for combo extensions, very similar to moves such as Shine Shot and Frieza's Crazy Finger Beam attack. This is a massive improvement to the skill and rectifies the conundrum of not having proper combo routes like the original did, while also maintaining what made the original skill unique in allowing you to flick your stick to either direction and vanish for mix-ups. And in my opinion, this new Faint Shot warrants a very solid A+, because it improves the original by a massive amount. This one is probably what y'all were waiting for the most for me to rank, and that is Hitz' new revamped Flash Fist Crush. It's not a counter like the original, it's actually a skill that is just purely strike-based. However, it is very weird in how it works. Once you get hit by this little freeze, you cannot move, you cannot evasive, you cannot limit burst, and you're forced to take the hit. It can be used to combo into things like Jump Spike. It is very weird to dodge, online in particular. However, it can be key stunned at the backdash. It has no iframes on the backdash. which results in it being actually pretty reasonable to punish in the neutral, despite the fact that it has a pretty bad glitch that I'll get into here in a bit. It can be guarded. However, online this can be weird, especially if you happen to be very close, and as you can see, it can also be just guarded. However, this is only something I would recommend doing offline, because if you do it online, it could probably result in you getting hit by a glitch. And you can also counter it with regular counter skills such as Super God Shock Flash, which is especially useful to know. But the thing that makes this skill controversial is the fact that it has a glitch. If you clash with somebody in the neutral and use this skill, it will freeze them, making them entirely unable to defend themselves. Despite the glitchy nature of this skill, it actually is not that bad of a skill to deal with, and it's very balanced overall compared to his other skills, and that gives it an A+. Coming up next, we have what is technically a new skill, but it's also not at the same time, because it is just the second input of his Justice Kick skill. But Dispo's new Justice Crush skill is very good, especially when you go into Supersonic mode. When you go into Supersonic mode, not only does it hit harder, but it gets a guaranteed teleport follow-up. And the reason that this works is that for some reason in Supersonic mode, the Justice Crush hits much harder not only in terms of damage, but in terms of how long it stuns your opponent for. It will keep them stunned for a very long time compared to how it is whenever you're not in the Awoken skill. By a significant enough degree to where you can create an entire loop out of nothing but Justice Crush without breaking your opponent's stamina. It also has a little backflip function similar to Super Explosive Wave, but it's not really useful, to be honest. And the reason I'm giving this the first S rank in this ranking is because it works so well with his shitty Awoken skill. Like, good grief, it's so good. Coming up next, fittingly so, we have Jiren, the other Pride Trooper, and his new Infinity Rush skill, which is a skill that can be used while guarding just like Evil Whirlwind and All Clear, but that's not what makes this skill so strong, and neither is the damage. The damage is actually quite low, but as you can see, the absolute defining characteristic of the skill that makes it so high on this tier list is the insane levels of unbreakable hyper armor it possesses, making it be able to trade with literally anything that is not a grab attack. And it's insanely difficult to grab somebody out of this because it is such a quick animation, and if it misses, the lariat does not come out. But it is very safe on block, has a lot of pushback, which cannot be countered by anything except a Broly-like grab that has a lot of range. And as you can see right here, it has hyper armor all the way through the animation, making the ending lariat be able to armor through things too. And perfect blocking this can result in you still getting hit by the follow-up at the end, because it has so much tracking. As you can see here in the footage, it completely does a 180 to hit him out of his 1-bar vanish. And for those reasons, I'm pretty confident in giving this an S rank, because it is single-handedly the best trading skill in the entire game, no contest. And I think rather fittingly, we have Rosé in third place with his new revamped Divine Retribution skill. I would definitely say that the original skill was more of an appetizer for what was to come, and this skill is just overall a little bit better than the original, not just in terms of its damage, but in terms of its utility. Because while the original one is pretty unsafe, this one actually does have a safe frame on it, allowing you to block cancel and step cancel out if it misses. Not a massive improvement, but this skill was already solid to begin with, so they did a pretty good job, all things considered. And for those reasons, I give this skill the third S rank of the video, because I do not think it deserves the top place, and because it's just decent overall. In second place, I felt pretty confident in putting 18, because this new revamped Deadly Dance is deadly with a capital D. because despite losing its combo extension feature, it remains completely unvanishable. But the main thing that is so good about this skill is that it works like Neo Wolffang Fist. However, unlike Neo Wolffang Fist, this skill only costs 2.5 bars to do maximum damage, making it single-handedly the most key-efficient skill of its type. While this skill is great, there is one skill that comes before it, and that's why I'm giving it an S+, because there has to be a second place. And so first place goes to the one and only Perfect Life Form, Perfect Cell, and his new Perfect Attack skill. This is the closest skill in this entire list that I would say is comparable to some of the best skills in the entirety of the base game. Up there with things like Ki Blast Cannon, God Fist, Jump Spike, Soaring Fist, you name it. And how fitting that this is based off of one of the best special attacks in the entirety of Dragon Ball FighterZ. Literally the only two flaws about this skill is that it does not have the safety and screen covering of its original counterpart in that game, but it is also not able to flawlessly combo and cancel into his ultimate attacks. But these really aren't big flaws, because he can also chain into his basic combos, he can chain it into itself, and he can also cancel into his other skills such as Kamehameha and All Clear. All of the things this skill does, it does incredibly well in a perfectly balanced manner. And for being the closest thing to perfect, puns entirely intended, this is the Z rank of this ranking, the best skill in this entire lineup.